Mircea Popescu, who is believed to be one of the largest holders of Bitcoin and the so-called father of Bitcoin toxicity, is reportedly dead at the age of 41. This is a developing story. A Costa Rican news outlet cites the Judicial Investigation Agency as a source, saying he drowned while swimming by a beach, but this has not been confirmed by CoinDesk. Popescu was an early Bitcoin adopter and evangelist, creating the now defunct Bitcoin Securities Exchange, MPX. His sexism and bigotry was well documented in his blog, leading many to deride his influence. And joining us now to discuss is a crypto OG, original gangsta, and lead maintainer of Privacy Coin Monero, Ricardo Spagni, who's also widely known by his internet handle, Fluffy Pony. Welcome to the show, Ricardo. So, like many crypto native folks, you knew Mircea as an internet chat acquaintance. You also tweeted out that Mircea Popescu died last week. He was a thoroughly unlikable person who taught me so much about Bitcoin. I think the thing that will stick with me is his insistence that newcomers to Bitcoin, lurk for 6 months before saying anything. We'd have stronger communities if this was a tradition. So I'm just curious, Ricardo, to what extent did you know Mircea, and what did you learn from him?
Yeah, I mean, he was, like I said, he was an unlikable person. So we knew each other from the Bitcoin Assets chat room, which was a chat room on IRC that was primarily used to discuss things like Bitcoin companies issuing stock on exchanges like MPX. It's not really been well trafficked over the past few years, especially since the rise of ICOs and so on, kind of muddy those waters. But I mean, there was kind of a mutual respect for each other from a technical perspective, and I certainly appreciated some of his views on Bitcoin's longevity, especially at a time when a lot of people didn't know if Bitcoin was going to be around for another year or two or three.
So what is his legacy that he leaves behind for the Bitcoin community, and why is it so important for the Bitcoin community?
I think one of the things that Mircea really believed in was that Bitcoin was going to be around for generations to come. And that's something that it's much easier to look at Bitcoin now and believe that, but when it was in its infancy, having that incredible conviction was not something that was very common or very well known. So I think that's conviction in what we're building and what we're using is something that I took away from Mircea. And then one other thing that, that I alluded to in my tweet is this idea of lurking. In other words, when you're new to something, especially something as complex as Bitcoin, spending 6 months just hanging around, reading what people are saying on Twitter, maybe watching YouTube videos, even channels like, Bitcoin channels on Telegram and so on. Those are great, but don't say anything. Just hang around for 6 months. You will learn so much. And you'll find that your questions do eventually get answered, and that when you do have something interesting to ask, that people are willing to answer those questions because it's not the same thing over and over again, the same questions about volatility and so on, that people get, really educated and people who are well known in the space, who've been in the space for a long time, get tired of answering over and over and over again.
Yet, Mircea was a very controversial character. You had another tweet saying that his criticisms were often unnecessarily laced with cruelty, even when he was straight up wrong. He rarely backed down, even when proven incorrect. And he was so misogynistic to the point where it was unbearably predictable. So he was not a likable guy, yet he is notable in the Bitcoin community. And there is a bit of tension in kind of acknowledging, at least with some folks, his influence in the community.
Yeah, I mean, look, like I said in that tweet, he really, there were points in time where some of the things he said were just appalling. They were disgusting. And we butted heads on some of those things because I'm certainly, whatever people want to think and discuss in the privacy of their own homes, no problem. But when they make it public, then it's like they're courting opinion, they're inviting opinion. And I feel like Mircea often used that as a barrier, almost as a a way to flush people out. If you didn't agree with his opinions, then you would immediately disregard everything he said. And having to dig through really the muck and the mud of sometimes really disgusting ideas that he had around genocide and so on, to get to the gems of truth lying in there, it was a hard dig. The reward sometimes wasn't that great. So, there's definitely, he leaves a legacy. There's some amazing things that he said, and Pete Rizzo has done an excellent job of trying to compile some of it. And at the time, you didn't really notice how painful it was digging through the muck, because it would happen in the course of conversation on an IRC channel. But I would pity anyone who had to go and dig through all of his posts today.
There's a lot to muckrake in there, shall we say. Bitcoin bulls are also drawing criticism for being insensitive to his death, taking a very Bitcoin go up view, which is to say, if this guy owned a lot of Bitcoin and he claims to have owned 1 million coins, some Bitcoiners say if he's dead, that takes a lot of Bitcoin out of circulation and creates more scarcity. But it's insensitive. But your thoughts on that?
I think it's interesting, because if Hal Finney, for example, was alive today and then passed away, of course the thoughts would be very different. People would say, "Oh no, poor Hal! I hope he left money for his family." There would be this outpouring of gratitude and support. And because Mircea was unlikable, the opposite has happened, right? I mean, no one wants to say, "Oh well, he said some interesting things." They just want to sort of slowly back off it, in case someone reads something on his blog, which at any point, in any event, seems to be down now, and gets offended. And again, I think, it really just, if Mircea was still alive, he would take incredible pride in knowing that he's offended so many people that they're afraid to say something. So, or that they're saying something that then they've had to delete because they're taking this number go up view. So I think ultimately he wins. He wins in a very interesting and subtle way. But I do think, having that view of, well, thank goodness that like Bitcoin's value might increase because someone died. Not very palatable, and certainly there are people that did like him, and it's a little bit mean and cruel to them to have that view. Whether he took his Bitcoins to his grave or not, he was a living person who has died, and that in and of itself is a sad thing.
He's repeatedly been voted as most likely to fake his own death. So did he really die? We'll see. No, well, we await confirmation. This is a developing story at CoinDesk. Moving on, Craig Wright making some news. He won summary judgment against Bitcoin.org owner Cobra, the UK High Court, saying that Bitcoin.org has to take down the Bitcoin white paper. I wonder what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I think, there's multiple court cases happening at the moment. There's the Cobra case and a couple of others that are playing out. I kind of think this is a bit of a nothing burger, because a court can, of course, rule for or against anything, but actually acting on that or getting the person to act on that is really challenging, especially in a situation like this where Cobra's real identity is unknown. And I think that his pseudonymity, whatever it is a benefit to him. It's a protection to him, because it means enforcement is going to be extremely challenging. And I think that there's definitely something that he has planned, in terms of that he's obviously sought legal counsel, and at least I hope he has, in terms of how these things play out. And I don't think it's going to work out quite the way Craig Wright's lawyers seem to think it is. If it really comes down to enforcement, then Craig Wright's claim to copyright is going to be thoroughly tested, and it will fail.